public board meeting for March 24th, 2021, Police Services Board, York Region. I'd like to welcome everyone and call this meeting to order. At this time, I would like to acknowledge the land that we are on. On behalf of the board, I'd like to acknowledge the land we are meeting on today is the traditional territory of many First Nations, including the Chippewas of Georgina Island and the Mississaugas of the Credit. These lands are now home to many diverse Indigenous people. We also acknowledge that York Region falls under Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaty with several Mississauga and Chippewas First Nations. So with that, we will begin our meeting. I would ask if there's any disclosure of interests. Seeing none. And I will move to the confirmation of the minutes from February the 24th. By Chair Emerson, seconded by Ms. Fang. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. We are at item number 4.1, and that's presentation on advancing 21st century policing human trafficking report to the community.
Morning, Madam Chair. Morning, members of the board. Nice to see you all. I know there's been a lot of discussion over the past year about human trafficking, and seeing as we have some new board members, I've asked our members, our experts, to show up today with what I think you'll be very impressed with is a presentation on our human trafficking strategy. So in saying that, I'll turn it over to Deputy Bigra, and he can introduce the team and carry on from there. Brian.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, Chair Haxon. Good morning to all members of the Police Services Board. And I'd also like to offer a special welcome to all community members who have taken their time this morning to join us for this presentation. I have the pleasure this morning of introducing you to two outstanding members of York Regional Police, Superintendent Rhonda Corsi and Detective Ricky Ho. Superintendent Corsi is the YRP's Commander of Investigative Services. Investigative Services includes our Major Crime Bureau, as well as our Special Investigations and Support Bureau. Detective Ricky Ho is a 17-year member, veteran of York Regional Police. He's worked uniform patrol in Markham. He's worked in the Criminal Investigations Bureau in Markham. He's worked in the Emergency Response Unit for York Regional Police, and he is currently assigned to York Regional Police Human Trafficking Section. I applaud Ricky, and during his career, he has sought out various opportunities for advanced learning. And throughout his career, he's achieved a diploma in police foundations and leadership from Humber College. He's achieved a Bachelor of Arts in policing from Wilfrid Laurier University. And he is currently enrolled in a Master's of Science, Law and Public Safety from the University of San Diego. This morning, Ricky will be presenting a thorough overview for you on YRP's victim-centered approach to dealing with the very real and serious issue of human trafficking. So Ricky will start that presentation now, and following the presentation, he, Rhonda, and myself will be available for any questions that you may have. So thank you, Ricky.
Thank you for introduction, Deputy Chief. Before I start, I just want to acknowledge and thank the dedicated men and women in the human trafficking section for their dedicated work in approaching a victim-centric and trauma-informed approach into combating human trafficking. And also like to thank the support in our Special Victims Unit in helping us in collaboration of solving the problem.
Ricky.
So this presentation, when I start, I'll basically break it down into two components, two parts. The first part, I'm going to talk about the legal framework and how we're going to use that to build trust and legitimacy with our community partners. And then the second half of the presentation, I'm going to talk about, since the changes in the law, how York Regional Police and the Human Trafficking Section able to make some significant impact in our combat against human trafficking. So to start, I'm going to start with the law. The Supreme Court of Canada held that previous prostitution law has a negative effect on the security and safety of those working in the sex trade. The court decision set up the reform in prostitution law by excluding criminal liability for non-exploited relationships. An example could be sex trade worker working in business such as a strip club or massage parlors. Individual sex trade workers are given a form of immunity for advertising their own sexual services. It is an offense to purchase, but not to provide them. As a result of the Supreme Court decision, the Canadian Criminal Code was amended in 2014 to clearly regard human trafficking as a serious crime. The Protection of Communities and Exploited Persons Act recognizes that women and girls are disproportionately impacted by sexual exploitation. Since the law has passed, law enforcement and our community are still adopting this relatively new concept of victim-centric approach to help individuals who are being exploited in sex trafficking and forced labor. Entry into the sex trade is influenced mainly by various socio-economic risk factors, such as homelessness, child abuse, drug addiction, low self-esteem, and other vulnerabilities. The solution is not eradication or enforcement targeting those working in the sex trade. It is a collaboration approach with our community partners to help those being marginalized.
Ricky, can I just interrupt? The slideshow isn't switching, so I wanted to let you know that we see the whole presentation, so.
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, thanks, Paula. We're just going to try and make a couple amendments here then with the presentation.
Thank you. We can see it switching now.
There we go.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Thank you. To go back, YRP has been and will continue to focus its resources on preventing and combating human trafficking. Our unit mandate, York Regional Police has stepped up its effort in the fight against human trafficking. The Special Victims Unit Human Trafficking Section has developed particular attention to combat human trafficking while seeking to protect the victim's dignity and equality. To effectively tackle exploitation in commodification of sexual services and forced labor, YRP is committed to build trust and legitimacy for those impacted by the traffickers. The Human Trafficking Section is committed to investigating the commercial exploitation of victims in the sex trade and or forced labor. Our investigators maintain a victims-oriented approach in accordance with Ontario provincial strategy to end human trafficking. I'm going to talk about procedural justice and how that's going to impact our approach. Procedural justice is the idea of fairness in a process that resolves dispute and allocate resources. It strongly correlates with the quality of people's past experience with an individual or law enforcement agency. Research indicates that 1/3 of human trafficking victims are still unlikely to report crimes to the police compared to other groups. It is due to their perception of not being heard and being treated fairly by the police. Lack of trust in the criminal justice system is a fundamental issue that causes sex workers to underreport violence and exploitation to the police. We will strengthen and continue our strong community partnerships and welcome human trafficking advocacy group as part of our service-wide approach. HTS also provides training to our frontline officers and call takers with our non-biased approach to human trafficking victims. To acknowledge the past and present injustice, Canadian research has indicated that Indigenous women and girls are at a higher risk of being exploited in the commercial sex trade than other demographic groups. The past and present injustice can contribute to the overrepresentation of victims from our racialized and Indigenous communities. When it comes to anti-human trafficking strategy, HTS acknowledge the disparity and continue to incorporate solutions through the lens of our racialized and Indigenous communities. Increasingly, organized crime groups are targeting women and girls in our large urban centers. Despite our commitment, police are having difficulties gaining victims' cooperation due to some barriers. Reflecting on our challenges, HTS recognized that aggressive enforcement and eradication strategies could harm the victim's trust in the police. I'll talk about some of our positive non-enforcement activities our unit engage in. Eradication strategy has shown to be ineffective in addressing human exploitation. The current legislation and our experience have recognized that the value of early intervention by supporting these individuals and their family. HTS aims to achieve a victim-centric approach to connect and support at-risk youth and minimize the victimization of individuals. YRP and the society are working in partnership to protect our youth through the sex trafficking protocol under the guidance of the federal and Ontario anti-human trafficking legislation. There is evidence to suggest that homelessness is a significant risk factor, leading our young person to be exploited. With harm reduction in mind and contributing to a long-term solution, YRP participates in the York Region Homelessness Youth Strategy. YRP also works alongside with Victim Services of York, 360 Kids, and other NGOs to mutually support our vulnerable groups and provide assistance without the need of laying any criminal charges. Human trafficking investigators have also strengthened non-enforcement outreach efforts through Project Uriel and Project Stay at Home. These projects often initiate our victims to connect with human trafficking support services. How are we going to combat human trafficking? Through resources, information, and evidence collection. In working in collaboration with human trafficking survivors, HTS designed an innovative smartphone app. The app is designed to help people currently working in the sex trade who want to exit. This app was also designed for families or loved ones who wish to help someone exit the sex trade. This app is designed so that traffickers are not alerted to its true purpose. Sex trade workers can access the app discreetly with the password provided and document evidence or seek resources to assist their escape from their traffickers. We have shared the app and trained our community partners with the aim to reach those who are affected by the sex trade. I'm going to talk about and acknowledge some of our community partners. So in 2020, YRP recognized that sex trade is a growing crime in Canada despite being underreported. This prompted a partnership with the York University and Children's Society to research data and develop tools to better protect vulnerable groups from exploitation. Other examples of transparency and accountability in anti-human trafficking strategy include our ongoing training delivered to frontline officers. HTS continued to drive innovation with technologies to capture accurate crime data related to exploitation and commercial sex trafficking. HTS achieved a high level of transparency through dialogues with our community partners, include other criminal justice agency, victim support groups, and community stakeholders. As a leader of anti-human trafficking investigations, YRP assists and supports police services in human trafficking investigations by providing guidance on their cases and trainings needed. YRP is involved in providing ongoing training at the Ontario Police College in human trafficking investigator course. We're also members of the Ontario Human Trafficking Intelligence-led Joint Forces strategy to build our law enforcement collaboration approach. So in part two, I'd like to talk about some of our achievement and our future. While trust and legitimacy encompass a wide variety of existing program, projects, and police practices, all anti-human trafficking strategy rely on policy and oversight to guide York Regional Police and our members to tackle the issue. Our comprehensive policies and procedures aim to achieve operational excellence and ensure members have the information to join our fight against human trafficking. The policies set the foundations for our training and public awareness campaign led by the Human Trafficking Section. Through training, our frontline officers are empowered with the knowledge to recognize indicators of human trafficking. HTS also work closely with our community partners to prevent the crime before it even occurs and support survivors through trust and transparency. Meanwhile, YRPs continue to improve intelligence gathering and resources that hold offenders accountable. Our comprehensive human trafficking policies and procedure. Human trafficking victims often come into contact with police officers. The initial contact with officers and their interactions will determine whether the victims seek help from police and whether offenders are held accountable. Public Safety Canada indicate that training for police officers varies on the topic of human trafficking across Canada. Our commitment is necessary to combat human trafficking, but a clear policy and procedure enhance and guide our organization to achieve that desired impact. The Human Trafficking and Sex Trade Procedure, LE 383, is a living document that grows and adapted to the needs of our communities. Annual review and revision are crucial in keeping YRP up to date with legislation and best practices. Topics covering the current procedure include the following: definition of human trafficking, possible indicators of human trafficking and sexual exploitation, defining the responsibility of our dispatcher, patrol officers, supervisors, and our investigators, defining the collaboration between Victim Services of York, Children in Society, Victim Witness Assistance Program, and other law enforcement agencies. I'd like to touch on anti-human trafficking training. The Ontario Anti-Human Trafficking Strategy also prioritized the need for training to equip frontline service providers to respond to the issue. Human trafficking awareness has been part of our frontline officers reclassification training. HTS investigators delivered that training to help equip uniform member to detect sign of exploitation. Over 80% of our uniform members have since received their awareness training. The victim-centric awareness training for our members aim to shift away from the view that trafficking victims as criminals themselves. The shifting attitude in the community about human trafficking victims help our police investigations, as many in law enforcement and public are beginning to understand a victim-centric and trauma-informed approach on human trafficking. The power and control wheel illustrates common tactics that traffickers utilize to exploit victims. Police need to build authentic and trusting relationships with our victim, advocacy groups, and our community to overcome barriers facing our victims. HTS provide educational program on various human trafficking related topics to raise awareness, such as YRP creates several awareness campaigns in partnership with Crime Stoppers, women's support networks to encourage the public to report the crime. Many municipal bylaws punish both sex trade workers and traffickers equally. Bylaw fines can cost sex trade worker up to $880. The stigma and financial impact may prevent them from exiting the sex trade. Overboard eradication strategy will force the workers to engage in unsafe working conditions. In fear of prosecution, workers may decide to work alone and take fewer precautions in screening clients. The diminishing trust with law enforcement often preventing them from reporting violence to the police. The spirit of Bill C-36 is to protect those sell their own sexual services, protect our communities, especially children, from the harms caused by prostitution. Recognizing the role of our bylaw officers in the fight against human trafficking, in 2021, we are commencing collaboration training with regional bylaw enforcement officers, starting with the city of Markham. Trust and transparency. According to the Canadian Center to End Human Trafficking, 35% of law enforcement professionals report the biggest obstacle to overcome human trafficking is building trust with our victims. But this trust is partly the result of traffickers' manipulations. Unfortunately, trafficker manipulations can be reinforced when law enforcement, particularly by law, deploy an aggressive eradication strategy that further stigmatize and isolate those working in the sex trade. HTS will continue to address the distrust through comprehensive training and partnership with our communities, human trafficking advocacy group, and law enforcement agencies. A critical step to develop an effective strategy and future policies on human trafficking involve empirical data collection. Capturing data can be challenging since human trafficking cases are complex and often do not fit clearly into the legal definition of exploitation. As a result, YRP is working closely with the York University and other research institutions to study alternative tools and resources. Human trafficking investigations often cross multiple police jurisdictions. The information is often captured in various databases, making it difficult for intelligence sharing. To create an accurate analysis, YRP had made several improvements to our Uniform Crime Report, record management system. The use of business intelligence to help us pattern the complex issue of human trafficking and hold offenders accountable. Since Bill C-36 became law in 2015, and between the period of 2015 to 2020, HTS has conducted 414 victim-centric investigative interviews with individuals at risk of being exploited. It resulted in the unit launching 196 criminal investigations and filed 244 human trafficking related criminal charges against traffickers and those obtaining sexual services for consideration. In 2017, frontline officers had only reported 20 incidents potentially related to human trafficking, and 0 criminal charges were filed. To address the challenge of underreporting, human trafficking awareness became part of our officers' reclassification training in 2018. Since the program inception, YRP greatly enhanced our effort, and our frontline officers made a tremendous impact. Human trafficking report drastically increased to 291 incidents with 197 criminal investigations in 2018, 215 incidents and 80 criminal investigations in 2019, 295 incidents and 78 criminal investigations in 2020, even during the pandemic. A total of 312 criminal investigations were initiated, and that resulted in 525 criminal charges since training has implemented. HTS was directly involved in a total of 508 human trafficking investigations that resulted in a total of 769 human trafficking and exploitation criminal charges. Since Bill C-36, YRP had rescued numerous victims from being exploited. I'd like to touch on 3 levels of sex trade briefly. So there are the street-based, the informal indoor, which is your hotels, Airbnb, and condos, and formal indoor, your strip clubs and massage parlors. Our highest areas of concern are those that are on the streets and others that do not have a safety net. Our key driver in the changes in legislations was to protect the sex trade worker, especially under these conditions. HTS focuses our response based on their unique risk factors. The main objectives of the new law that passed was to provide the sex trade worker with a safe working environment. Now, since 2015, HTS has not encountered any person under the age of 18 working in a massage parlor, but we have encountered underage victims at informal locations such as hotel and residences. I'll talk about our future moving forward. So on the National Human Trafficking Awareness Day, the Ontario government introduced the Combating Human Trafficking Act. The proposed changes include 2 new acts: the Anti-Human Trafficking Strategy Act in 2021 and the Accommodation Sector Registration of Guests Act of 2021, as well as amendments to the Child, Youth, and Family Services Act and the Prevention of and the Remedy of Human Trafficking Act of 2017. Together, the proposed changes would support the government's response to human trafficking. The proposed changes has 2 main components that will impact YRP. First, enhancing the use of major case management for missing persons in human trafficking investigations by investing in software development to meet the specific need of human trafficking investigators and analysts. Secondly, establishing a new joint forces investigation team from police services across Ontario in the provincial Human Trafficking Intelligence-Led Joint Force Strategy. YRP is proactively conducting intelligence gathering, intelligence analysis, investigations, and distribution with information with other police services and First Nation police. Thank you.
Change the deal. Thank you, Ricky, and we are prepared to respond to any questions that the board may have. Can you show us the...
Other questions from board members? Chair Emerson, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. On slide number 6, you don't need to bring it up, but you've got community partners. Why have we not added the 9 municipalities? You talked about municipal bylaw people. I'm wondering, I know it's a busy slide, but you know, the 9 municipalities do play an important role in being a partner in this, and I think they understand, you know, like the parlors and things like that. So I know you got down York Region, but I know we're partners with you on that, but I think it's a bigger issue, like an issue that the local municipalities should be included. I do believe they play a role. And if I go to slide 9, maybe I missed it. I was trying to listen. That's a very busy slide, and I have no idea what the colors and numbers and that mean. Am I missing something on the presentation, Ricky? Slide 9 is with the circle 244 and 214, and then all the colors around it, and then the colors aside. So am I missing some footnotes or something I should see in that?
I'm sorry for that, slide number 9. So basically, with that chart on the left of the slide, I'd like to address some of the myths and some of the facts that related to human trafficking victims and the sex trade. And just for reference of how, I guess, our preconceived notion of the past of treating trafficking victims as criminals themselves.
So you're saying the colors on the right are go with the wheel. Am I understanding that? So
correct.
So the yellows, there's a bunch of yellows, but how would I know luring a person under 18 is a yellow, but I've got a 3, 7, 11, and 23. How would I know which one that is?
Sorry. Oh, the slides.
Am I missing something? I'm sorry if I'm.
No. So that's just the breakdown of charges. So as a result of our 414 interviews conducted in those time, we filed 244 criminal charges, and that's just a breakdown of different charges that related to human trafficking. That's all it is.
I understand, but I mean, but maybe my colorblind, but all the yellows are the same. So you add them all up. You add the luring a person, trafficking in person, luring a person. So that's all. I guess it's just a little confusing for me, anyways. But that's just my comment, Madam Chair. But it's a great presentation, and thank you for that.
And Chair Emerson, just in part response to your initial question in regards to partnerships with each of the municipalities, absolutely, the human trafficking section recognizes the value of a partnership with the municipalities, and they are great partners. And the human trafficking section liaises with the partners, the municipalities, specifically the bylaw departments, on an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fang, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you, Ricky, Brian, and team. Great presentation. I just have one clarification question, please. I think it's the second last slide where you show the evolution from 2017 to this year or 2020 in terms of the investigation of human trafficking statistics. But I think the idea is to show that as we do more in the investigation, we find more and more criminal activities in human trafficking. But somehow between the switching color labeling of blue and yellow, I'm a little bit lost. So I just want to, I think you started using blue as criminal activities in 2017, but later blue becomes non-criminal. Did I miss anything, please?
So sorry to clarify, the blue color represent incident that we investigate, but they're not criminal charges. The yellow bar on the other half of the circle is the result of criminal investigation or charges. So in 2017, we have 20 reports that we received from our frontline officers and 0 criminal investigation as a result of that. But moving forward in 2018, we have changed those into 291 incidents and a result of 197 of criminal investigations as a result of that. So that's just to clarify the color scheme on that.
So this particular model, yeah, it was just to reference the training that was provided to our frontline officers. So this doesn't include the incidents that were reported through the general public. The 20 incidents on the far left was representative of the incidents that we received through reporting from frontline officers during other investigations that they may have been conducting and encountered human trafficking. So through training our frontline officers into what to look for in indicators of human trafficking or human exploitation, everything has increased over the past 4 years.
Okay, so the data is just internal reporting.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for a clarification. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. Other questions, comments? I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much, Detective Hull, for your presentation and all the great work that you're doing out there. And please share our thanks with all your team members as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Could I have a motion to receive? Chair Emerson, and seconded by Mr. Purchell. You're with us in person. Wonderful. Thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. We are at deputations. Do we don't have any deputations to my knowledge. Is that correct? Thank you. We'll move on to communications 6.1. And Ms. Avelino will be taking this one. Go ahead, please. You're muted, I believe. You're muted.
I'll move the recommendation, Madam Chair. It's pretty self-explanatory and advise the OASPCB. Look out, here comes Jennifer Chang. So, but anyways, I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Mayor Bevilacqua, all those in favor? That's carried. 6.2.
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is just for information for the board. And the one thing I will note from January to March of 2020, YRP was not included in the reporting to SIU, as we wouldn't have had any matters then. So it's just for information.
Thank you very much. Got a mover and a seconder, please. Mr. Cooper, Ms. McCullough, all those in favor? That's carried. 6.3.
Sorry, Madam Chair, is this from Mafalda or me?
This, I believe, is from Mafalda. This is correspondence from Richard Stubbing, Assistant Deputy Minister. For information.
Yep. I'll move receipt, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Moved by Chair Emerson, seconded by Mr. Cooper. All those in favor? That's carried. We are at items for consideration, reports of the chief. Item 7.1. Go ahead, please.
Morning, Madam Chair. Once again, and through you, this is a very brief contract extension for printing services. We have to report to the board any contract above 5 years. And this is a 1-year extension of those printing services in relation to Bronze Supergraving Co. Limited. Purpose for it, compatibility with existing facilities and equipment. So subject to any questions, we're asking for an extension of 1 year for that contract.
Thank you very much. Questions from board members? Ms. Fang, go ahead.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Virginia. Just a clarification. Is this vendor the only vendor for printing services for us?
No, but, well, I'll turn it over to Jeff. Jeff, you there?
Yes, thank you. Good morning to the board. Thank you, Chief, and through you, Chair. There are a number of printing vendors. However, we do choose one for printing services around business cards, letterheads, and that's what this printer covers. Just to explain it a little bit further, York Region is our partner in this. They've bumped it out 1 year with council, and we need to do the same with the board in order for York Region to complete its public procurement process, and we'll give those results at that time.
Thank you, Jeff. So for other type of printing services, we have other vendors.
That's correct, including an in-house vendor. So York Region hosts a print shop, and we do spend about $80,000 a year using the in-house services. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm okay. I can move it, Virginia.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, moved by Ms. Fang, seconded by Mr. Purchell. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. 7.3.
I have 7.2, the lease extension for 2768.
I'm sorry, and I know that Deputy De Silva is going to look after that one.
Yes, ma'am. I'll turn it over through you, Chair, to Deputy De Silva.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to the board. The report before you is seeking a lease extension for a period of 4 months of the Member Support House. And that is due to a delay in moving our members to the new YRPA building. The new YRPA building is scheduled to be completed in the summer of 2021, and the lease extension would allow the gapping to ensure that we have sufficient time to move into that new building. Subject to any questions, that is the information that I have to present.
Thank you very much. Questions of Deputy Mayor Bevilacqua? Go ahead, please.
Just moving it.
Thank you. And a seconder, please. Ms. McCullough, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. 7.3, the business plan 1-year status report.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Through you. This is obviously the 1-year completion of a number of business plan goals. I'll turn it over to Superintendent Slade as all of the tracking and activities around our business plan fall in executive services. So Randy, over to you.
Thank you.
Morning, Madam Chair, and through you, I'd also like to acknowledge that Superintendent Al Almeida and Assistant Manager Brenda Mulroy are on the line in case there's any further questions down into the process. The objectives of the 2020-22 business plan are the result of extensive research and consultation process involving internal external stakeholders. A total of 104 business plan activities contained in this business plan under 2 pillars of our community and our people that could be undertaken and implemented planned successfully. Each pillar has 4 objectives with 3 actions for a total of 24. There were 68 activities commenced in year 1. 54 of those year 1 activities span multiple years and are in progress. All 14 activities scheduled to be completed in the end of 2020 were accomplished. The activities scheduled to begin in year 2 are well in progress, and there is no risk of incompletion of any of these activities slated for the completion of the end of year 2. The organization successfully adapted to the challenges brought on upon by COVID-19 pandemic and effectively minimized any interruptions to service delivery. Highlights of the 2022 accomplishments can be found in Appendix A. Full listing of the year 1 activities and their detailed updates can be found in Appendix B, and specific performance measures under the business plan can be found in Appendix C. Subject to any questions, that's it for that report.
Thank you very much. Questions on this report? Ms. Fang, go ahead.
Thank you, Virginia. I have 1 clarification questions and then 2 comments, please. My question is on page 73 under performance measures under our people. And in the middle, there is statistics on number of internal job postings for civilian postings. And I see the percentage like 40 permanent positions filled by internal candidates, 40 versus 48 opening, it's more than 71%. And then same thing, 26 temporary, over 46 temporary opening. It's also more than 46%. So I'm just wondering, how are those percentages calculated?
Brenda, can you provide any assistance with respect to those percentages?
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I'm just looking at that myself. So it's 40.
Over 48. Am I understanding correctly?
Yeah, so of the 40 is relating just to the permanent civilian positions, not the total civilian postings.
Yes, correct.
So,
So 40,
right?
yeah,
So
40,
it'd be
40 out of 48, it's more than 71.
Yes, you're right. I believe that might be an error.
Brenda,
Yeah,
can
my
you turn your
apologies.
camera on, please? Thank you.
Hi, good morning. Yes, I'm just looking at that. Yes, and it, yeah, I believe that might be an error in the percentage calculation. So you're correct. And I apologize for that error.
Problem. And I think same thing, 26 over 46 will be over 50%.
Yeah, I can go back and verify that, but yeah, it would appear that those percentages are incorrect unless I'm missing something in
Brenda.
interpretation or as well.
No problem.
I'll make a note to go back and clarify that in our report.
Okay, thank you. And my comment, I actually want to thank Brenda. I believe it's Brenda and Randy provided information since the last board meeting to me through Mafada. I am interested in learning about the statistics in our membership, both uniformed civilian in terms of diversity. So in looking at our diversity and inclusion strategy and going forward. So I think the fundamental first step is to collect credible data. So Brenda did provide those data to me, although it's not 100% satisfactory, but this is history because our survey didn't carry out the detailed clarification of various ethnic background groups. So I just want to comment that in our diversity inclusion team, as they prepare, strategize the next round survey, the board would like to be updated, and we also would like to see a diversity and inclusion report from YRP please when it's ready, because I remember Randy commented that it's not currently, which is fine. I just would like to say that at some point we would like to see that report. And then another aspect that just very basic data, a comparison of YRP membership in terms of Asian/Chinese versus the Chinese community in the York region census. I think we have a big gap there. We have less than 6%. I believe that combination of Asian and Chinese, I compare to other York public groups census data, they do break down South Asian, East Asian, Southeast Asian, and East Asian. But we seem to group everything in one and then just carve out Southeast Asian and combine them with Middle Eastern, I think, or Latino. But anyway, that's something I already provided my comment to Randy through Mafada. And back to the gap, 6% of our force versus over 20% of the population. I've also offered to Mafada in discussion with the ECT, I personally would like to help increase the within the Chinese community. So I would welcome someone from the ECT to join me to do a fireside chat webinar within the Chinese community at some point when everyone is ready. So that's all my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other questions, comments?
Madam Chair, if I could just make a comment. We welcome the opportunity to speak with Ms. Fang, no problem. I can have Ms. Fang, I can have Deputy De Silva, which all of our recruiting strategies fall in his area, to reach out at some point. I will tell you, we have a very robust recruiting strategy, and we work very hard with all the communities to try and increase the representation, but we're always open to looking at new ways of doing that. So those are my comments, and just the flow of that information to all board members. We just need to make sure I'm included as well in that through Randy and reaching into the organization so I can make sure you get the information you need. So thanks.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions, comments? Ms. Fang, would you move this item, please? Seconded by Ms. McCullough. All in favor? And that's carried. 7.4 is collection of identifying information in certain circumstances, bracket street checks. Go ahead, please.
Yep, I was muted. Sorry about that. Yes, Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to Randy. He'll give you a very brief update on this. It's a very simple report. Randy?
We put a lot of work into this, Jim. Good morning again, Madam Chair. As the Chief indicated, it's a very light report. Ontario Regulation 5816, the collection of identifying information in certain circumstances, prohibits police officers from arbitrarily stopping and requesting information from a member of the public. The regulation requires the Chief of Police to report whether collection or attempts of collection identifying information from individuals were disproportionately represented to a specific racialized group, sex, age, or any combination thereof. We had a total of 6 that were identified initially as street checks. After further review, 5 were eliminated and did not meet the qualifications, and the single one that was identified as a street check involved a white female who was perceived to be in her late 20s, was attempted for intelligence gathering to stop, and declined to provide any information and refused the officer's attempt to receipt of the interaction. That was our only single street check for 2020.
Thank you. Questions?
Move your seat, Madam Chair. The
Thank you very much. Seconded by Mr. Cooper. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. 7.5. I think you're on again.
I'm up again.
Yeah.
So again, a very light report respect to Missing Persons Act of 2018, where the police can make urgent demands for records without a court order during a missing persons investigation where there's no evidence of criminality. In 2020, we had 1 urgent demand of the 1,255 missing persons investigations, and that was to request telco cell phone information to try and help identify the location of the missing person. So we've provided that information to the board, who has a requirement to report back to the ministry by June 4th, and we've provided that report to Mafalda.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Have a mover and a seconder, please. Ms. McCullough, Ms. Fang, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. That concludes that section. We are at item 8 for consideration, reports of the Executive Director. Mafalda, go ahead, please. I understand you're having some audio problems.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At least I was. Can you hear me now?
Can hear you now. We'll let you know if we lose you. Go ahead. We're not hearing you.
Hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you, and I apologize for the audio issues. This first report that you have before you is the annual report on the Public Relations Reserve Fund. The balance at the end of 2020 was just over $166,000. And we had about just under $113,000 in revenue in 2020. As many of the board members are aware, the Police Services Act gives police boards in Ontario the ability and the authority to use the proceeds from the sale of unclaimed personal property, money found and seized by the police, to use in any way that they see fit that would, I guess, serve the public's interest. And our policy, the Public Relations Fund policy, governs how the board spends these funds, and the executive director reports semi-annually on the various activities in this fund. I'll take any questions with them.
Thank you. Questions? Ms. Fang, go ahead.
No question. I would like to move it, please.
Thank you very much. And a seconder, Mr. Purchell. Thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. 8.2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in this report, I am asking the board to continue to support the Character Community of York Region in the amount of $500 and in the amount of $3,000 for its continued support for the OAPSB annual conference and general meeting in April.
Thank you. Any questions? I have a mover and a seconder. Thank you, Chair Emerson and Mayor Bevilacqua.
Mayor and Madam Chair, can I just ask a question? It says that we seem to do this $3,000 for Ontario Association of Police Services Board. What do the other Police Services Board give? They give everyone gives 3,000?
Well, some give more.
More?
Sometimes some give more and some give about 3,000. So it's between $3,000 and $5,000. That's
Really?
average.
Do you have a breakdown of that?
I could get it to you, certainly.
Thank you. I think it'd be interesting to see who's paying all this, because it seems I'd be interested to see what boards are paying all that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Will you send the information out to all of our board members following?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I believe I had a mover and a seconder. Is that correct? Chair Emerson? And yes, and Mayor Bevilacqua, thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. Item 8.3.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the Freedom of Information Access request required to report annually in accordance with the board's bylaw regarding the administration of its policy under the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act and FIPA. And last year in 2020, there were no requests for access to information.
Thank you. Mover and a seconder, please. Ms. McCullough, Mr. Cooper, all those in favor? And that's carried. Do we have any unfinished business at this time?
Not that I'm aware, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other business at this time?
Madam Chair, if I may, probably directed to Jeff or to Dan Kuzmic. I'll give you just a little short story. The other day, a few weeks ago, my sister had an accident on the town line, and everything's okay. And lo and behold, about 2 weeks or 3 weeks later, she gets an invoice from the township of Uxbridge for $1,300 for 2 fire trucks. So he then, my brother-in-law, give it to the insurance, his insurance, and I guess they fight that out. I remember something a few years ago that we talked about charging these vehicle accidents and stuff like that, but I thought we were challenged and we lost. or something, we didn't get our funding. Am I right on this? Like, I was surprised, and I've heard a couple times since then that the fire department seem to charge every time they go. And I'm even hearing some are even charging them to go to a fire in a house fire. So I am not sure where we sit on charging people on this. And so I'm not trying to make a long story short. I'm just trying to understand it because I don't think we are charging, or we're not doing what we are. Maybe I'm wrong. Or there's Jason too. Good. So I don't care who answers. I'm just asking the question. Are we able to do it? That was quite a charge, $1,300 for 2 fire trucks that didn't need to come, but they did come and they charged them and they didn't do anything. So go ahead.
Mr. Channel, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. Thank you for the question. Several years ago in 2016, we initiated a process to mimic the fire treatment of charging for motor vehicle collision investigations and reporting at the scene of motor vehicle collisions. It was really an equal treatment we were seeking with fire services, who have been charging for several years for their fire equipment on scene. During that process, we did have a legal reply to us, and the board chose to go to, instead of a mandatory charge, that we would increase our fees around the reports that were being sold. And so that's what's happened for the last, I'm going to think, 4 years now. We have one of the highest fees in the province at $340 for one of these motor vehicle collision investigations and report. It's sold optionally, and where they are sold is typically where there's personal injury, and they attract lawsuits or dispute resolution within the insurance industry. That's where we sell most of those reports today. But right, you are, Chairman, we went through a 2-year process where we were seeking the same treatment as fire services, and at the end of the day, we chose not to go that way. Mr. Kuzmic, I don't know if I've summarized that correctly. Maybe I could ask for your comment.
That's correct. And both Jeff and I were heavily involved in that process and in the board's consideration of that issue, and his recounting of it is correct. So in terms of charging for, for services rendered in connection with the police call out, that does not happen. It's the cost recovery is as Jeff has described in those motor vehicle accidents. What the region does do is will seek the region, aside from the board, will seek cost recovery in motor vehicle accidents or similar circumstances where regional infrastructure is damaged, either through the insurer or in cases where there are deductible issues or where there is an uninsured motorist. We proceed through the uninsured motorist provisions under the Insurance Act, and we go directly after the people who cause the damages, to things like our light standards, our road signs, all those sorts of things. So there is an element of public recovery associated with automobile accidents on the regional side, and it is exactly as Jeff has described on the York Regional Police side.
So I guess I know it's nothing new, but I'd be interested to know if the insurance companies are paying the fire department, and if they are, is it time to go back and look at this, Dan and Jeff and Jay, go back and start and see where we are, maybe in the big organization, to go back and say, because if I'm hearing it right, I'd be shocked, and the mayors can tell me, maybe you could look into this to say, does your fire department charge to do a house fire? And I've heard from one organization they do. And that I can't believe that, but they are sending invoices out now because they could be there a long time. But York Regional Police on an accident could be there a long time too, tied up the road and tied up cars for a long time. So I'm just wondering, is it time to go back and relook at that in the future going forward?
If I could just add, Madam Chair.
Hey, Jason.
Mr. Emerson, thank you for that. The issue previously, I think from the legal standpoint where we got into a dispute with the insurance companies, was we weren't directly billing for our attendance at motor vehicle collisions. We were more or less indirectly billing by tacking the fee onto the cost of the report. The decision was made that we weren't going to, I think, partially for optics, partially for the consideration with respect to this, the idea of charging directly for a police attendance. The decision was made that we weren't going to do it that way, that it was going to be an indirect cost recovery by charging for the report. And that's where we ultimately faced the litigation from apparently the insurance industry en masse. And in the end, we dialed it back somewhat, but we still charge a fee that at least provides a partial cost recovery for the reports. But I think if we were to mimic the fire services, because I do know we've dealt with it with a number of fire services, including concerning how they get information to send out the bills. And in those conversations, I do know that there are some fire services that charge for attendance at motor vehicle collisions and some that don't. I'm not aware of any in the region that charge for attendance at actual fires, but I do know there are some jurisdictions that do that. And ultimately, it's a decision that's been made to direct bill, to send that bill to the citizen, and then that bill would be collectible like any other bill. But I think that's the decision that we would have.
Yeah, I hear you. And I'm just wondering if it's time to revisit because the way things are. But anyways, no problem. I was kind of surprised that a fire department would charge $1,300. They weren't even called out. My sister just called the police more or less, and she didn't. And I don't even know I think the ambulance did show. But anyways,
if I could just add, sir, there's just one point that a number of years, I think the genesis of the fire service charges is the Highway Traffic Act, because a number of years ago, a provision was added to the Highway Traffic Act to allow municipal fire services that attend motor vehicle collisions on provincial highways to bill the people that are involved in those collisions, and in some circumstances to bill the province. So it was it started there with this provision under the act to deal with the split between a provincial highway and a municipal fire service. And from there, the fire services discovered that this was a new revenue option. And over time, it's expanded.
Yeah, and I agree, because we did that when I was the mayor of Richard Stovall. We had to look after the 404, a volunteer organization, and look after the 404. So then we ended up charging the province for that. But I mean, if it's a resident or someone in the own municipality, we never did that, but I understand some municipalities do. It's a big revenue, and I guess they're saying, well, the homeowner's not really paying it, it's the insurance company that ended up paying it. But anyways, just a thought. I just wanted to know just where we stood on this, and maybe someday we'll have to relook at it, because I think this is a way of things are going nowadays. You charge everything you possibly can, and to go forward. Thank you.
Chair Emerson,
worth a conversation. Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Chief.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just saying, going to say, definitely worth a look at the OACP level to see what other services are doing. We can probably get that information relatively quickly, but if there's been a change afoot across the province, it would be interesting to know. But just wanted to make that comment.
Mr. Channel.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe I can make some feedback here. We do keep in contact through a finance group with the OACP. I can confirm that there are no police services that are doing a direct billing the same way that fire services is, but it really is, the chief's got the point, which is if the board is interested in this, I don't know if our cost recovery might be in the 800 to 900,000 of what is a $5 million bill to attend motor vehicle collisions. If the board is interested, I think advocacy around changing the Highway Traffic Act to have similar privileges that the fire services have would be one way of advocating for a change that would facilitate a billing the way that we're describing.
So do we want to be leaders and try to stir the hornet's nest, or we just want to let it lie? I guess that's my question. And I'd have no problem, Madam Chair, moving it, staff bring back a report in a couple months or whatever. Not a very lengthy one, just to say what our options would be if we want to stir the hornet's nest up. We don't, and it could be just to receive, or we could just get a motion to send it to the province or to OAS Is that where you send it to, that OAPSB? Is that the board or someone else? Somewhere else? Where would we send that, Jeff?
Thank you. I would imagine, well, we've got the Minister of Transportation in our jurisdiction. That would be one place for advocacy. And
Sure.
Certainly whether it's through the chiefs, I can tell you that the chiefs have made resolutions over the years on this. Maybe the Police Services Board is the place to go to, sir.
Well, we just put Jennifer Fang on there, so maybe that's the first item of business when she arrives there, to say, hey, this is what I'm here for, to get this. But anyways, I'll look to you if you want to bring something in the next few months. I'd be happy to look into it with you. But thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And for your information, East Gwillimbury doesn't charge with the fire unless it's extenuating circumstances. We have mutual aid agreements with Georgina, Uxbridge Township, Whitchurch, Stouffville. And so we cross the line on the town line many times to give mutual aid without a cost. They in turn come to us as well. Thank you.
Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
To follow up Chair Haxon's point, there are no fire services that we're aware of that charge for fire calls. Those charges are based on sort of on other things, including where people hit hydro lines, where they are involved in automobile accidents, those sorts of things. And the general idea is to free up by having some cost disincentives. The general idea is to free up those first responders for actual critical emergency services. So there's some policy effort there, but as far as charging for fires, as you indicated, there are no services in York Region that charge for fire calls. So again, we can certainly look back at that. We'll take it offline. We'll look at all the issues, and we can work with the executive director and the chair to bring back a report if the board feels that those are issues that should be updated.
Thank you. We have concluded our agenda to number 11, which is a motion to convene